What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Cervantes podcast. Joining me today to speak about how we as a Black community, but also as a society, need to listen and protect Black women and what that actually looks like is Brea Watkins and Kimberly Collins. Brea is an environmental studies major studying at the University of Pennsylvania, and Kim is a public policy and Africana studies major studying at Brown University. How are you guys? How have you been?
Good, doing well.
Yeah, doing really well. Really excited to be here.
Thank you for joining me. In August of 2020, Grammy nominated rapper Megan Thee Stallion revealed to the public that rapper Tory Lanez was the one who shot her in the foot, leaving a party at media personality Kylie Jenner's house back in July on Instagram Live, and why she was hesitant to speak up at first. Megan initially didn't say anything because she didn't want to put another Black man in jail and felt that if she told the police officers there was a gun in the car, they would have harmed her due to the historical tension between the police and officers and the Black community. Yes, this N word Tory shot me. I tried to keep the situation off the internet, but you dragging it. I never hit you. Only four in the car, me, you, my homegirl, and your security. I get out the car. I'm done arguing. I'm done arguing. I'm walking away. This N word from out the backseat of the car starts shooting me. After telling her side of the story to about 97,000 people on her Instagram Live, Megan received a lot of backlash, particularly from Black men and women. Why do you guys think this was the case? Is it because she's a celebrity? Is it because she's a woman? Is it because she's a Black woman?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of those factors kind of play into why she wasn't believed. I think also just as a society, even, without race, there is a history of not believing victims, of violence and, other events, traumatic events. But I think that because Megan, is someone who's very confident, very open, just about her sexuality and all of these things. I think that people feel intimidated by her and also aren't able to then see her as someone who could be a victim of something, that Tori did.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bria, I think that was really spot on. And I'll just add a little bit. There's just a history of Black women not being believed. You know,
Right.
there is a lot of past examples that we can call on, be it Anita Hill and other things that we can date back to, where Black women have been questioned and not really understood, and people not wanting to hear about our experiences. A lot of these are rooted in stereotypes that date back to slavery, and I think that just really sets the precedent when we talk about situations like these, because it's really not new. And
Right.
unfortunately, you know, Black women not being believed, is part of the reason why so many have stayed quiet about abuse and about violence and a lot of other things. So I think that this whole situation brought to the forefront, which what is really a historic, ongoing issue.
Right. And it's like, I think I like what you said about like it's not a new issue because like with Anita Hill, that wasn't that long ago, but it kind of like, it wasn't this past year, it wasn't the past 10 years. And it just goes to show that like Black women for like centuries don't are not taken seriously. People don't, but even in our own community, which is like kind of, it's like one thing when white people don't really care, but it's like you're supposed to be on my team, you're part of my culture, my community, and you don't believe me. And then it frustrates me because it's like Bria said, she's so confident in who she is about like everything, her sexuality, like you said, her personality. And it's like, why does that mean that she can't be harassed or assaulted? Why does, or like, if she's mad about something and she's not talking about music or fashion or who she's dating, it's like, oh, we don't want to hear it. So it's very, and it's like also, God forbid, no, I can't. God forbid, Kylie Jenner, something happened to her or something happened to a white pop singer, whatever. It's like, oh, hashtag pray for Kylie, hashtag pray for Selena, pray for Ariana. But it's like no one cares when it's Megan or any Black woman. So I always think about that.
Yeah, and there's sorry, Kim. We both had like an idea at the same time, I could see, but something that's also interesting is that this isn't like the first time Meg has gone out of her way to protect another Black man. She even went on her live like a while ago, I
Mm.
think even before the Tory incident, where she talked about like an incident with her ex-boyfriend and things got physical between them because I think he had cheated on her and gotten someone pregnant, and it got physical between them. The police were called. She said she defended him and lied for him because she didn't want him to get caught up in the police because of, the history of police brutality. So she said, no, he didn't harm me, even though she was visibly, bruised and like, all that stuff. And then the police questioned him and said, well, did she hit you? And he said, yes, sir, he did. And so then she was taken to jail and she had a mugshot. And now she has it on her record. And it's just like, you see the reciprocity isn't there. It's just not there.
Right. Like I was watching like this blogger on YouTube that covers a lot of hot topics, and she was like, like Megan has a history of getting herself into situations, and this is a Black woman blogger, and I felt like I don't think you would say this about someone else. Yeah. Like she's very honest, but I feel like it's not her fault. So because someone's mad and they like are expressive about that physically or verbally, it's like we don't give that compassion and grace to Black women, but we always give it to white people. Especially if a white woman cries, the world just shuts down.
I think one thing quickly I just want to add as well, we're talking about these instances, in Meg's situation of Black women coming to the defense of Black men because they understand, what's at stake because of how our society operates. And I'm sure Meg did not want, her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, to get shot and killed by that cop or brutalized by that cop. And a lot of scholars have called this a double bind that Black women have to face, where you're battling between your womanhood and defending your womanhood, but also defending your Blackness. And so it truly puts you in a situation where you feel caught in the middle of, well, what do I do? Because you understand the implications of both of those identities, and it becomes really hard to figure out, what to do in situations and how to best protect yourself. That's just something I wanted to throw there.
That's a good point, because I think you guys had multiple episodes, and your recent episode about like unpacking the good guy narrative, I believe, and like how Black men kind of like I'm struggling, and then it's like we are too, like we're women also, like there's layers to it. And I had to check myself like a couple years ago when I was kind of playing the victim about like a racist incident, and a Black woman, one of my fellow peers here at Hofstra was like, like I'm sure you've had it bad, but think about like how I and many other Black women have had. And I was like, oh, like I didn't even think about that, because it's like, oh, like I think sometimes Black men think like, oh, like we're the same, but it's like we're not, because you guys are dealing with much more stuff, especially if you're like dark skinned. I think that's an important thing, because it's like if you're a light-skinned Black woman, yeah, you have it kind of difficult, but it's the access that you have to certain things isn't the same access that brown skin or dark skin women have. So it's nuance, and I didn't understand, and I think a lot of Black men don't understand that nuance. But it's like, check yourself the same way how we tell white people to check themselves. Let's check ourselves and listen, like you guys said. If someone's speaking out, like let's take it seriously and give them the grace. Have either of you felt a time where people didn't listen to you because you're a Black woman? What is your earliest or recent memory of this occurring?
That's a good question. I think I've been blessed not to experience things maybe as traumatic as like Meg Thee Stallion has faced, you know what I mean?
Right.
I've been really blessed in that sense, but there's still moments where, you're in class or like you're saying something important and someone speaks over you or says the exact same thing as you, and they get the praise and you're just sitting there dumbfounded, like, I just said that, So I think that, not saying that those problems are invalid or anything, or you know what I mean, but it's just a different level of things I face. But I definitely feel as though my Black womanhood, impacts how I'm perceived in a classroom or, certain professional settings, and impacts like what I say, how I have to say it, feeling as though there's so much pressure to make sure everything you say is great.
Yeah.
That's definitely there. But yeah, I guess that's kind of what I think about. That's what comes to mind for me.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I really agree. I think being in certain spaces in college, and especially when you're in leadership positions as well, and you're working with people who are majority white or, not Black, it's hard because, you're constantly thinking about, okay, like if I say something a little bit more stern, are people going to perceive me as aggressive? Or like when it's time to make tough decisions and you have to articulate those thoughts, how are people going to perceive you? And there definitely have been times where, people have not listened to me or tried to undermine me for no particular reason other than, my identities, because they don't do that to other people in the room who don't look like me. Is something that I faced multiple times. And it's just frustrating because it just adds another layer to the difficulty of the work you're doing. But it's really in moments like that where I really try to just do my best to recognize who I am and to not get intimidated, because a lot of the times people understand the power that you have and they want to take that away from you. And so just reminding yourself, why people are doing it or the fact that they might be intimidated by you is just something really important to keep in mind.
Right, like she's saying everything right and she's intelligent, but let me just shut her up because she's black and I feel threatened. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I feel like sometimes you guys, like black women, I feel like sometimes if you guys are you have to be super stern and unapologetic and like kind of not not emotional at all to get your point across. Like I work at Hollister, and the store that I worked at previously, there was one of the managers was a black woman, and she was I was a little intimidated based on what I heard. But then when I got to know her and we worked together, it was like, oh, like why are people complaining? Oh, it's because she has to. It's like either people put up a idea that she's something that she's not, or but also she kind of has to like stand her ground and like not joke around too much to be taken seriously, while the other managers who aren't black, non-black people of color, they don't really have to do as much, especially if they're men. It's kind of like, oh, I listened to what Angel or Carlos had to say and like you could just do it. But when Shannon speaks, it's like, oh, she's a bitch, or she's, and it's like that's not we don't do that to the male managers, we don't do that to the black male managers, so it's I understand what you guys are saying with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I feel like, examples of that. Even something that comes to mind, I guess, sticking with the theme of, Black female rappers, there's like a really famous quote from Nicki Minaj, or it's like a video clip from one of her documentaries or something. And she's basically speaking and she's like, people call me a B word, but it's really just me wanting things done the way I want them done. She's like, when other guys ask for XYZ to be at the video shoot before they arrive, they're not called any names. But she's like, when I do that and I have my demands for like what I need on set, what I need from the people who are helping me, I'm called the B word. But she's like, you know what? If that's what it takes for me to get what I need to get, then that it is what it is. You know what I mean? It is what it is.
Right, because at the end of the day it's like it's business and she's the boss and you listen to your boss. So if she was a man, oh, like, oh, he's just, that's just him. But I think when a woman does it, it's like, I don't, it like
It's like, how dare you?
Right.
yeah, how dare you command the room and demand respect.
Yeah. And that's just really what happens when people enter into spaces with preconceived notions about how people are. You know what I mean? Like the fact that on your job, people are already trying to tell you that, this Black woman had an attitude or she acted a certain way. Why is that the assumption? Why is that like the baseline, initial thoughts of, being under the, I don't want to say order, but you know what I mean? Just being over by a Black woman, that's just not right. And I think, again, this is kind of like a resounding trend and theme, but a lot of this has to do with stereotypes, and the stereotypes that have continued for so long. We just see these manifested in so many different forms through all of these different stories that we've shared.
Yeah, it has to take me. I think sometimes it has to take you like seeing someone for themselves, and also her friends telling me like, oh, she's not that bad, people are just dragging it. But I think people have to just like just see it for yourself, see it for where they are. Were they rude to you? Were they disrespectful to you? That's different. But if someone's telling you something, you don't just believe it, especially if it's like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes people of other communities can kind of like insult us and like hold us to a certain degree than like we do, if that makes sense. Like they expect her to be nice or smiling all the time, and it's like you don't expect other women to do that. So why does she have, like, I always hear like my female friends saying like, people always telling them to smile, or like they're walking down the street and it's like, oh, smile, like why are you upset? It's like, no, you don't have to. We don't tell men to do that. I've never been told smile. Like I've never been told that. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of standards, I think, that, you know, just it's about like controlling women. And I think when women act outside of those norms, it makes men very scared. So, telling a woman on the street to smile is just like a small scale form of that control, and like wanting a woman to be palatable or like act to your standards.
Right. Right. I was watching this has nothing to do with Black women, but I was watching the Britney Spears New York Times documentary, and I was like, wow, so it's like this happens to like other women too. It's not just Black women, but I could imagine if she were Black, it would be worse. But then I think of Janet Jackson immediately and how she was treated, what with the deleterious situation that happened to her with Justin Timberlake. So it's very interesting. Now, this story really bothers me, and I'm sure it bothers you both as well. In November of 2019, actress and producer Gabrielle Union was fired from NBC's America's Got Talent for speaking about a hostile working environment. Apparently, Gabrielle's hairstyles were apparently too Black, racist jokes, and Simon Cowell smoking cigarettes in inappropriate places. Actress Deborah Messing and Ellen Pompeo came to her defense on Twitter. However, when asked about Gabrielle Union claiming AGT was a toxic work environment in a January 2020 interview with the Today Show, Terry Crews responded by saying, first of all, I can't speak for sexism because I'm not a woman. That was never my experience on America's Got Talent. In fact, it was the most diverse place I've ever been in my 20 years of entertainment. I wanted to ask you guys, why was it so difficult for Terry Crews to stand alongside Gabrielle Union?
Okay, first, I need people who I like the fact that he said that he can't speak on behalf of sexism. It doesn't take being a woman to recognize and call out what sexism is, and your refusal to do so is just really sad and it's despicable, especially at his grown age.
At his big age.
Yes, especially when I think, don't quote me on this, but I think she spoke out for him when he was in a sexual assault situation a couple years prior.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't do it for her, and like you're married to a Black woman, you have Black daughters. I know that doesn't excuse you, but it's like that makes it worse, I feel like.
It doesn't make sense. That's if a white person had said, well, I'm not Black, so I can't speak on racism, we would have eaten them alive. You know what I mean?
Done.
Done. So for you to be a man and act as though you can't see when something is wrong just because it doesn't personally affect you is ridiculous and doesn't make sense.
The way he spoke about, like, I don't know if you saw the clip, but the way he was speaking about it just kind of grind my gears, because it's like, why are you so angry? Did she hurt you? Did she say something about you?
But also too, I think, when we ask people to be an ally and come to the defense of Black women, a lot of people refuse to do so because they don't want to be uncomfortable. Terry Crews didn't want to push the boundary and potentially jeopardize his standing in terms of his job and how the world was perceiving him. So he chose to, kind of like cop out and just not do anything. And again, it's because people don't want to be uncomfortable. And it's sad because, how much are we asking white people to push the boundaries, to be an ally, to be bold and all this other stuff? But then when we ask, Black men to do that,
it's kind of like, I don't want to talk about that, bro. And it's like, no, you have to. We can't expect white people, non-Black, Hispanic people, Asian, whatever, to stand for us and have uncomfortable conversations like you just said. But then when it comes, like, if we're in the wrong, oh, you're trying to tear down another Black man. Like, no, we're like
trying to make you better, actually.
Yes, because it's like that mentality, we're passing it down to our sons. It's like a lot of guys, I said it in a recent like interview, I think, on my podcast. I think a lot of guys are like scared to have daughters, but it's like, no, just treat your sons better. It's not the women's fault. Like, it's not your daughter. It's not like the whole T.I. and his daughter. Like, it's not her fault. But then his son can do whatever he wants.
Right.
So it's very, and I have to, I'm preaching kind of, and I have to take my own advice because sometimes like I'll be in the barbershop or I'll be in the locker room or I'll be in a bunch of like spaces where it's just like the guys. And sometimes if I'm being honest, I'm a little too scared to ruffle the feathers because it's like I'm just here to get my cut and go. But I have to understand that like you said, I have to hold my fellow black brothers accountable. And it's like I definitely do that here at Hofstra. Um, but it's a little intimidating, but I'm willing to be uncomfortable if it makes a better world for my sister or any black woman living and interacting with these sometimes toxic men in our community.
and
You know, I
and
have to take that step.
mhm. And I think also too, I just want to like go back to something you said before, just about how, a lot of men say, I'm scared to have daughters. That's just like a recognition that, our society is not supporting women. And I don't know, it's interesting because it's like you can perceive that and you could recognize that, yet somehow people don't want to change their actions and people don't want to change the norms of society. I think that's really sad, and like as you mentioned, it's not an easy project to be uncomfortable. I mean, to be uncomfortable and to speak up and stuff like that. But it's like slowly but surely you have to start breaking down those barriers, and you have to start having those conversations, because if everyone did that and spoke up and talked within their inner circles, the entire perception of society would begin to change in terms of how we come to see women, how we treat women. It really starts from that inside. um,
Right.
those
Because
inside
I
circles, and
continue.
it would expand, throughout our society, for people to then do the right thing, because our norm and what we accept would change as a society. So I just think it's frustrating when like men say, oh yeah, I don't want to have daughters, whatever, but then don't do anything or any steps to try to help women. Like that to me doesn't make sense, and it just seems like a very selfish act, a very complicit act. And so I respect you, just for starting to push the conversation and figuring out, where this can happen. Because, I think Brianna, on our podcast, we've never admitted that it's easy, but at the same time, there comes a point where like
I
that
just
doesn't
got to
matter
do
anymore.
it.
Like we have to do something.
I just got to do it. If I like, because I remember over the summer, I was realizing like, I'm talking to a lot of people that agree with me about certain things. And if me talking to you guys, me talking to my friends, that's not going to change anything. I'm going to have to talk to someone that doesn't agree with me or check someone that doesn't agree with me for things to change, you know? Because me talking, it's like kind of like, I don't know, it's like not talking to a wall, but like us talking all the time. It's like, okay, we know, but like if we don't talk to the other side, it's nothing changes.
It's confirmation bias. Like you keep
Yes.
reaffirming your beliefs and you feel as though then that makes it right, when in reality you're just talking to people have the same views as you. Yeah.
Right. And
So
that's
you got to push your boundaries and have those uncomfortable conversations if you actually want to get anywhere, because the status quo that we have now is not good enough.
no, no. And I think that like even for this podcast, I don't want to just keep it safe and only like talk about things that everyone agrees with. I want to push the boundaries. Like I was a little like I want to have a conversation with my cousin who's an NYPD detective, but I was a little scared because I was like, I don't know what he's gonna say, and I don't want people to look at me a certain way and think Cervantes is like, what happened? But if I don't speak to him and talk about that tension between police and black people, like it's never gonna, someone has to hear that and nothing is gonna change, like we said before. So yeah, I think, but it was nice to see Will Smith speak out in support of Gabrielle Union. I saw that like mini clip, and it's just, yeah, it's just weird to see white women and one black man stand up for Gabrielle, but when black women find themselves in a predicament, like where are the guys, you know? So I'm glad that some people spoke up and didn't leave her hanging. um why do you guys think people don't take black women seriously?
I think it's just a combination of all the things that we've talked about in this episode.
Okay.
Kim mentioned like just from slavery, Black women have been objectified, you know, not seen as people, not seen as humans, not seen as worthy of respect or equal treatment. And there's so many layers to that. like, you know, you talked about Cervantes, it's not only being Black, but it's also being a woman, but then it's also the color of your skin, and if you're light versus dark, you know, it's how your body is shaped. It's all of these things that play into, you know, whether or not a Black woman is deemed as like worthy of respect. And I think that we kind of have to blow those notions out of the water if we want to get anywhere. And, you know, even in, you know, the most recent episode Kim and I did about unpacking the good guy narrative, a lot of men who are good guys, they only respect women they think are attractive, you
Yes.
know? They only give women respect if they could see themselves dating them or having relations with them, but they don't actually give the time of day to Black women who, you know, don't fit in their neat little box, you know? They're
Right.
not using their voice to help those women. So I think that there's just a lot of things that need to be tackled if we want to get anywhere and take women, Black women, seriously.
Right. Don't just respect the, like, you know, those Instagrams where it's like a certain type of Black women and
Hmm.
it's like they're super beautiful. It's like, don't just respect them. Don't just protect them. Respect the women that, you know, you're not attracted to, but that doesn't mean you can't speak out on their behalf. I think also, like you guys said in your podcast before, over the summer, I think media too, because we've seen so many different types of white people. We've seen jocks, the nerd, the cheerleader, the goth girl in the back. We haven't seen many different types of Black people, and we've only seen like one or two types of Black women. We see like the light skin love interest, and then we see the sassy Black best friend, whether it's High School Musical. I think Brea brought up the little sister from Casey Undercover, like Zuri from Jesse,
Yep.
even though I
Yep.
like Zuri, but I think we've only seen two different types. So then when a Black woman that doesn't fit that, you guys, millions of other Black women, it's like, oh, why is she smart? Why is she speaking up for herself? Why is she not sassy and moving her neck? So I think the media too plays a
Mhm.
part.
Yeah, and there's also just so many studies you can look up that show that, from starting at like the age of like 4 or 5, people perceive Black girls as being like older, being more culpable, meaning like, being more likely to do something wrong or commit some kind of
Be
wrong.
fast.
Yeah, being fast. So these are actual studies that like present this information. And again, if we don't work to destroy these like biases, they just manifest themselves and they just keep snowballing into, greater things. And it's just sad. And also too, what does it look like for your own people, for certain pockets of your own Black community to not respect you? How are we then demanding respect from everybody else? It's not going to happen. So I think that's also why Brea and I talk so much about coalition building within the Black community, because if we don't even have each other's backs, then what are we asking from everybody else? And that's just kind of what it boils down to. So it's sad. It's really sad, and it shouldn't have to be this hard, and it shouldn't have to be this fight. But we have to keep speaking about these things until people actually take the steps that are needed to, really facilitate some change.
I completely agree. We can't be like the oppressor wanted us to be divided and it kind of worked. And we can't we can't get out of this if we're not on the same page with Black men and Black women. So I completely agree. According to a 2017 article from NPR.org titled Black Mothers Keep Dying After Giving Birth, Shalone Irving's story explains why, by Nina Martin. Martin reported that Black mothers in the US die at 3 to 4 times the rate of white mothers, one of the widest of all racial disparities in women's health. A Black woman is 22% more likely to die from heart disease than a white woman, 71% more likely to perish from cervical cancer, but 243% more likely to die from pregnancy or childbirth related causes. How can we solve this issue, do you guys think?
I think it comes down to listening. You know, I mean, this whole podcast episode is about listening to Black women, and I think that so many times, like, Black women who, you know, might be in the healthcare system, like even Serena Williams, when she was giving birth, she said she had to crawl out of the bed to find a nurse. Like, no one was listening to her pain. She was in pain, had to crawl out of the bed, crawl on the floor, and wave someone down in the hallway because she knew that she was experiencing something wrong. So I think it's just like doctors and other healthcare workers need to start listening to women who come in reporting symptoms, and don't rule things out just because you think Black women can take it or Black women are stronger inherently. That doesn't make sense.
No.
Right.
And also, I think so specifically with the issue of Black maternal mortality, like I have read articles for class and other things where they truly like there are some medical practices that people learn in med school that really do hint at this idea that Black people are biologically different, which is crazy. And like these ideas that Black people can't feel pain and all these other things that contributes then to when people ask for help, when people say they're in pain, people not believing them because there's this idea that we can take pain, that we're so strong, we can handle
It's stronger
everything.
than everyone else.
Yeah, when you have those crazy perceptions and like doctors actually believe that to be true, that's why so many Black women die giving birth, because you're asking for help or you're saying, hey, look, like something doesn't feel right, and nobody's really believing you until it's too late. But I think the greater issue also comes down to structural racism and the ways in which racism in all these different institutions, whether it's education, like in med school or like other schools, and then also in the healthcare system, all those things kind of connect and compound each other and then elicit crazy experiences for Black women.
Right.
So it's not just one system working to do this. It's actually multiple. It's like how we actually educate people. It's also too like think about the quality of hospitals. Does that differ because of where you live? Where you live very segregated or not? Is it hyper policed or not? And then also like there's not a lot of Black doctors at all, so what are the causes for that? So there's a lot of different issues that I think exacerbate and cause like these really unfortunate circumstances.
Right. Like two things I wanted to bring up. My grandma's from Mount Vernon, and she has a lot of medical like related issues. And the way my dad and my aunt has had to advocate for her and just demand more, and because they're not super well versed, having to call into my mom, who's a emergency room nurse, and just fighting for like to be heard and seen. And also it's like my grandma a lot of times doesn't want to go to the hospital in her own town. She'd rather drive to where we're from, or from a town a little bit higher up. And it's like, if you are in pain, I shouldn't have to commute farther. I should be able to go right to my hospital down the block. But it also goes to what you said. It's like that hospital is not very well funded. That's the truth. So it's sad that like we have to go to like White Plains or go to Scarsdale to get better treatment for my grandmother, just anybody living in that community. And it's not fair. It's not fair. And I think I remember seeing like a viral video on Twitter a year or two ago of an Asian doctor on Twitter saying, we don't necessarily tend to believe in Black women. They're over dramatic and not treated the same way as women of other backgrounds. Like he actually admitted that. And I was just like, wow, like this is real. So we have to, our medical professionals, doctors, nurses, everyone, they need to be culturally competent. They need to understand that like, while you might feel like this person is being overdramatic, take them seriously. Like put all that aside and take them seriously. Also, I think we also need Black people in just more areas. Like we just need more Black doctors, period. We need more Black people in the administration. But like you said, it's not just the healthcare field, it's also government and education. Who are teaching these future medical professionals? Is it all white men? Is it all white women? Because they have a certain bias. We know, Black children always getting in trouble when it's like, no, he's not bad, he's just a little rowdy. But if there was a Black teacher, they would have understood that. So yeah, I think cultural competency and just more Black people in certain fields, but good Black people, because we know there's some that not all skin folk ain't kin folk. So we need good positive Black people in certain roles, so that it's truly diverse. What are some ways Black men can advocate, protect, and listen to Black women, not just on social media?
I feel like this question, like we always talk about this. We get texts about this question.
Really?
Yes, from people asking what they can do. At a certain point, I can't tell you how to respect somebody. You know what I mean? That's like you learn that in kindergarten. Like that's just such an advanced thing. Like, why
Yeah.
do I need to spell out how to listen to somebody or how to respect someone? Those are basic things that you should be giving people. And I think that it comes down to, like you said, like when you're in the barbershop, are you laughing along or are you calling people out on their BS? You know one thing, you know right from wrong. And I think it just comes down like putting push to shove and not just tweeting hashtag protect Black women. It's like, do
Do it in
I
real life.
it's real life. Is it in your real life? Is it something you think about? Is it something you actively work towards? And I think that like continuously asking Black women that question is like deflection. Like you understand what it takes. Don't keep asking like putting the pressure and the labor on Black women to like spell out a whole like workbook plan for you. Like
Right. This is the first and last time I've ever asked that because I just feel like it's the same thing as asking, it's the same thing as a white person asking us like, Brea, Kim, Cervantes, I know you've been going through a lot. Like, what can I do? It's like, no, you had Google is free. Read, educate yourself. Don't ask someone to like do it for you. You know?
Yeah, and I also feel like because so many people have asked this question, I feel like in some ways people have then made it seem like it's so hard to protect Black women. And like, obviously, like what we said, yes, it is difficult to be uncomfortable, but there's also so many forms of helping people. It can literally be social with your day-to-day interactions. This can happen on an institutional level. You could put your life's work to academia or research or legal scholarship that like gets to some of the more structural elements. Like there's just so many ways and so many avenues of what you can do. And I just feel like so many people have stigmatized it to be this like really difficult, crazy, profound question that we need to answer and figure out. And as Brea mentioned before, it's really not that groundbreaking. It's not rocket science. And I feel like at the very least, like if you see somebody on the street or if you see situations happening, like what your natural inclinations are or what they should be, and you need to act on those and be a good person.
yeah.
Also just think about what you're supporting and uplifting yourself.
Yeah. And also quickly, like there's also only so much like a Black woman could do. It's on you to check your biases. You know what I'm saying? Like, how
Right.
can I sit there and like walk you through? Do you respect women you're not attracted to? Like how am I supposed to do that work? That's work that you have to sit with yourself, feel uncomfortable, and like do. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Like I think it's important that like you guys weren't gonna bring me on your podcast and be like, let's talk about protect Black women. I would have to send the olive branch and invite you to come on and talk about protecting and listening to Black women. It wouldn't make sense vice versa. Also, I just think listening. I feel like listening. People always tell, like my dad always told me, like you have two ears and one mouth. Like you should listen twice as much as you speak. So for me, the ways I protect Black women, for people listening that don't understand or not paying attention, I'd say for me, I think listening to Black women, I think if someone's speaking about their experience, it's valid, and give them the respect that you would give other women of different colors the respect. And I think also just after having this conversation with you guys, I have to like do more research or just maybe speak to more people or figure out ways that I can, like, I don't want to just do the same thing. Like, okay, I'm gonna have another conversation with another group of Black women. No, now it's time for me to take what I've learned and apply it in my everyday life. So confronting negative, toxic men in certain spaces, not being afraid to get into an argument. If I lose a friend, if I lose a whatever, that's better than a Black woman losing her life or not being believed or being harassed over and over again. So I think, yeah, that's it. That's thank you. Thank you. No, but I think it's true. Like we have to, same thing with white people, we tell them to do certain stuff. Black men, we have to do the same exact stuff. I remember seeing like a video. I was so shocked of the video in 2019 of a white man attacking a McDonald's employee over a straw, who was a black woman named Yasmin Jones, and her black male employees, like I remember one was trying to hold her back, but a lot of them were just standing there. And I was like,
hold her back if she's getting attacked.
yeah, they were like holding her back. And I'm just like, get him, get the white guy. Why are you holding her back? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't, and then the other guys who are just standing there watching, I felt for her. I felt for her in that moment.
That's ridiculous. And also too, just one thing I quickly want to add is we keep mentioning and bringing up all these anecdotes of these crazy circumstances in which Black men have not like protected Black women. And after a certain point, you also have to think about like the internalized anti-Blackness that may persist within you, and how that also may be why you act the way you act or who you choose to protect and don't protect. And that's just a reality. And that's not to like come for people. That's not to question anyone's Blackness, but it's just to say we do live in a society that is anti-Black, and you do internalize, or you could internalize some of those things. And that could also explain who you're choosing to protect or what you're doing. And I think that self-analysis has to happen. And that's also, I feel like you can't try to even make strides in protecting Black women until you do that self-analysis and you look at your toxic masculinity, you look at your internal anti-Blackness, because it really doesn't make sense, especially if you're raised by a Black mom, you have other Black women in your life who have loved and protected you, and then all of a sudden you can't do that to anyone who's outside of your family, and sometimes not even your family as well. Like logically that just does not check out, and that doesn't make sense. So then you have to look at what have you been conditioned to believe? How have you been conditioned to look at yourself and your life and other Black people? And there is internalized anti-Blackness, and I think that is just something that needs to be questioned. I mean, it exists in so many different forms, and that's not to say I haven't had to check my own self and my own biases. Like everyone is conditioned with certain things, but that's just also the reality of the situation.
No, yeah, I think if you're a Black man, if you're a dark-skinned Black man, or just a Black man period, and you don't like being Black, or you don't like being Black, or you don't love yourself, or you're not you don't have that, you're anti-Black within yourself, you're not going to protect a woman that looks just like you. You might protect you might protect your mom or your sister or your girlfriend, but it's like, that's another thing too. I think a lot of people will only protect their family, but then it's like, oh, I don't care about her, she's famous, or I don't care about her, she's this and whatever. And it's like, it shouldn't have to be, the woman shouldn't have to be related to you for you to like feel bad or want to advocate or want to protect, like shouldn't have to be attractive, shouldn't be blood related, you shouldn't have to sleep with that person. That person should have to be your daughter for you to be like, oh, okay, now I'm gonna protect Black women.
Yes, and like that makes me just think of the Black Lives Matter movement at large. When Black women are in the streets protesting for the killings of unarmed Black men, we're not rationalizing it by being like, that could be my bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yes, that phrase is there. And like, yes, people say that, but like, I know for my own self, I'm doing it just because that person was a human being. I don't have to like think like that could have been my brother, but he's not. I care about him just because he did not deserve to die because he's a person. You know what I mean? Yes. I think men a lot of times, that's why we need the Say Her Name movement, is because there's such a lack of support for Black women, because men are like, well, she's not my sister, she's not my girlfriend.
You guys launched your podcast in June of last year titled Heart to Heart Podcast, the lived experiences of two young Black women. Why did you decide to create a podcast, and what do you hope your listeners and people in general get out of it?
So we launched our podcast, and it was really Brea who like pushed this whole thing forward. I always have to give you credit. We always had a lot of different stories and things that we wanted to share from our high school experience, because it was so unique, just in terms of us being like one of the only Black students in our classes. And then, just being in PWI, schools and institutions. just for like all of our lives.
Mm.
And just has elicited like just very interesting experiences that we wanted to share and talk about. And especially in the context of last summer, as you know, so many things were unfolding in terms of race, and people were finally starting to listen and learn and like sit down and actually look at the resources they need to help Black people. We wanted to make sure that the issues that were happening to Black women didn't become lost, because as Brea mentioned, the Black women who were brutalized and killed like really didn't make mainstream media. I think people really made it a point to make sure we said the name Breonna Taylor and stuff, but there's so many other women as well as trans women and men who have not been recognized. And so we wanted our platform to serve as a space where we can uplift those voices and share those narratives that just have historically been under recognized and underappreciated. And you know, we just really want to share the experiences of Black women, talk about what Black women go through and experience. And you know, that's a really broad topic, so you'll have to go
Yes.
and see all of our different episodes and such. That is pretty much the summary of it.
No, that's awesome. I remember when you guys launched it, I was like, this is so odd. Like I wasn't expecting it. It came at the right time. I love you guys' podcast. And the way you guys like, you're so unapologetic and you call people out. I wasn't expecting that. I was not. It's very important for Black women to like, I'm gonna say this and I'm not gonna say sorry, and that's it. Take it as it be. And I think that's so important for Black women, especially dark-skinned Black women, to do on a platform. And I think you created such a big, because the space isn't really for me, it's for Black women, but to just listen and just like learn and be entertained at the same time, it's like wow, like we really needed this. And I hope you guys continue. I hope you guys know you're killing it. And you guys essentially like inspired me to do a podcast because you guys make it look so easy and cool. So I was like, let me do this. Let me see what I can do. Go listen to it. Heart to Heart podcast. It's awesome.
Thank you so much, Cervantes, for having us on. And you know, also to your point, like I think a lot of people didn't expect this from us because we've been kind of conditioned to be quiet and just kind of take a lot of the things that have happened. But this podcast was kind of like saying no and putting our foot down and making sure that we get our side of the story out there, we get our truth out there, we get our experiences out there, not only for other Black women to feel safe and like have a safe space and be like, wow, thank you for talking about this, but so other people who have, you know, either been the perpetrators of the things we're talking about or just like bystanders and just want to listen in, like that's why we're doing this, so everyone can take something away from it. So thank you so much.
Yes, of course, of course. As a Black man, I want you guys, Black women listening and Black women everywhere, that I will continue to listen to you, whether something tragic happens or not. There's no reason why Black women should be treated the way they do by society, especially by Black men. I'm hopeful that things will get better. Thank you, Brea and Kim, for joining me today on the Cervantes podcast. Tell them, guys, where they can follow you.
Okay, yeah. So our Instagram is heart2heart podcast. We also have a Twitter, just recently made that. It's heart2heartpod1. So that's where you all can find us.
Yes. And the podcast is available on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Have a good one. Happy Black History Month.
Thank you.